Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one, the only Turbo Toad token. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, right? We're going to be discussing the weekly price action as the last couple of weeks have been fairly dreadful, right? There's no easy way to say it. I would say pretty much ever since mid-August, it's really has slowed down. It has really been dreadful. And, we've been very, very patient, but even with patience, the weekly candles have been fairly poor, right? We wait and wait and wait, and then we get pretty poor weekly candles. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, objectively speaking, altcoins, meme coins, they're doing fairly good, right? If we take the literal tops of, let's just say, this cycle to the bottoms right over here, right? This was the bottoms in 2024. So if we put the one over down here like this, and we put the zero over here, we can see we are actually above the 50% zone. Okay. Which means, generally speaking, on average, altcoins are already becoming in that premium price. Okay. Right. Because that is how it works, right? If you buy below the 50%, you are getting a nice discount. If you buy near the 50%, you're probably getting average price. If you're buying higher up, that means you're already paying a premium. And of course, if you buy all the way with the expansion, you are really, really paying extra, right? You are overpaying practically. And so we can see, right, objectively speaking, crypto, meme coins, altcoins outside the top 10 are generally much higher than they were back in April, back in mid June, late July, and I know things have been slow the last few weeks, but generally speaking, crypto, meme coins, altcoins outside the top 10 are doing fantastic, right? They're doing much, much better. I know Turbo is struggling a little bit, right? If we go and see where this was yeah, the June lows. So the June lows were here. Of course, the April bottoms were here. And yeah, we are kind of still in this structure on the weekly, right? On the weekly, we have formed structure trend line. And that's just sometimes how it goes, right? We did break out of a zone previously, right? We did break out of the zone. We were in this type of zone right over here, right? Boom, we broke out. But then, boom, we created, guess what? Two lower highs. We had a low here, or lower high here, and another lower high here, and then we formed weekly resistance. So we're kind of still in this channel, right? We're kind of still in this channel. This is why I personally, in general, I just trade short term, because sometimes the further price action to the upside is not promised. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, right now things are selling off. I knew things are going to sell off. And I told people in the private community that they're going to be selling off. Once I saw this doji candle, I mean, this is just reversals, right? This is just reversals. Now, I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to be reversing all the way down here, but this does mean that we should see some red for at least the next few days, um, at the bare minimum, which doesn't really, scare me necessarily. We talked about altcoins, how they're going to be very, very manipulated for the next coming months, regardless, right? They might seem like, oh, we're going down. And then a couple days later, oh, we're going up, we're going up. And that's just the name of the game, right? That is just the name of the game at this point. And it's just going to be getting harder and harder, right? The details are going to still be into the charts for like Turbo and other cryptos, but we're going to have to be very patient with to see how daily candles close, how weekly candles close, because that's where the true data is going to be. Now, at the end of the day, technically, as long as we just have these lows, and even if we go down, just say to 0.0033, that's still technically valid, because then we would still create a higher low, right? We have a low here, and we create a higher low, and again, another higher low, right? These are the maximum edges we could really be going to. Just the same way how it's the same thing with these buys, right? We have a high over here, we have a lower high here, lower high here, lower high here. Okay. So, when, let's say, Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, Turbo goes down and then it goes back up, if it creates another lower high, we're going to be in a really big pickle and we're going to have to make a decision. Right. So that's the thing. We are kind of getting squished slowly, and we are slowly running out of time, but we still have enough space to go down one more week, probably up one more week. And then after that, we really, really have to decide. Listen, we talked about federal rate cuts. We said if it's not going to pump, last week, it's going to pump this week. If it's not going to pump this week, it's going to pump in quarter four. I'm confident quarter four is going to be a good quarter. Okay, I'm confident. I will say though, ladies and gentlemen, right, when it comes to the 3 month candle, it does not really look pretty at all. But the thing is, even here historically, you don't always need the prettiest 3 month candle. Now, it does always help. I won't lie, it does always help, especially for something like Bitcoin, right? I really want to see Bitcoin's 3 month candle do better. I really don't want to see the rest of September to be selling off, because if that's going to be the case, that's going to be practically a doji candle. And that's going to be our first doji candle for something like Bitcoin. And that might just signal that Bitcoin tops. That doesn't mean it's the altcoin tops or the meme coin tops, but that just might signal the tops for Bitcoin. Okay, so not ideal, because if that were the case, then we should be going back down to, at the bare minimum, probably around 93K if we are looking to make another attempt to go higher. Okay. So yeah, Turbo is just looking okay at this moment, right? We are still chilling. We still technically have space. It's just very, very long with how everything's taking. Like I said, things are still on track. They're just taking so long. Like that's just the annoying thing at this point. There's nothing really wrong with the technicals. Like us technically, like I said, going back down to even 0.00333. There's nothing wrong with that in terms of if we can go down there. Okay, it's just the fact that we are, it's the fact that it's taking long, it's the fact that, we just want to probably cash out at this point. Like, I think the average person, I still have a lot of patience, but I think the average person is just kind of mentally done. Ladies and gentlemen, the time to get serious is now. The next few months are going to be the most crucial time of your lives. Okay, we're going to have crypto exploding, and this is the time to get a portfolio review. Right, you got to make sure you have the right cryptos. You don't want any old or dead coins, or you don't want anything that can give you little profits, right? So we provide a portfolio review. We've also been smashing it with the high probability meme coins. We hit an 11x, an 8x, and 5.5x in recent times. We also provide a weekly report on the crypto data, on the crypto analysis, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, on other altcoins as well. You get all this and a bunch more other benefits. Highly recommend joining the private community. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make some money. And, I still, like I said, believe quarter four should be looking good. A trader does also believe that, we should be going down to at least 0.0036, right? Shout out to CTM Trader. We can see, right, turbo short limit trade entry here, targets there. So he believes, 0.0036 is where we should be heading. And that is just practically this weekly candle right over here, just right above it. So I definitely agree with him, right? I definitely agree with him that we should probably be sweeping this liquidity. That's probably going to be the goal for this weekly candles, to go back down here. And hopefully this is the last weekly candle close that's going to be a sell, because even if this week does end up being red, we still technically have a few days in September where we could really pump up and kind of manipulate the 3 month candle for Bitcoin, for other cryptos, to seem like, we got a decent close, which is what we're aiming for. All right, we're generally aiming for that. When we go look at something like Ethereum, right? Ethereum is going lower and lower as well. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, you got to realize, where things were just not too long ago, we're actually objectively doing good, right? Ethereum's doing great. Bitcoin is 114,000. Turbo, obviously Turbo is like kind of on the lower end, but it's still doing fairly decent. But you got to remember, right? We are pretty much almost done our whole entire cycle we have to do. Like I said, once we create this higher low, um, assuming that we do, then we really should start blasting off. Like, there's no other structure to complete, right? There's no other structure. And we can see before Turbo really started to blast off last time, it was messy, right? It was messy structure near the end, right? There was weak structure, sell off, weak structure for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden he pump, right? Structure was kind of slow, mediocre for many, many weeks, slow, 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 pump, right? It was dead. I mean, like, this was like so dead back here. It was so dead, pump, right? So that is just the name of the game with crypto. And yeah, that's ultimately it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy it. I love you guys so, so much. I guess we could actually finish off this video with the basics, I'll go over the basics very, very quickly for Turbo. We can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are losing our ranking. We are ranked 176 out of 9,504 cryptos, 264 million market cap. We have 26 million volume in the last 24 hours, 60% higher. We can see when we go in terms of holders, right? We did have that big drop, but then we were starting to increase again. And we can see as of today, we are down 3 holders. Nothing too crazy, to be honest. It doesn't really concern me when it comes to that. Yeah, overall, in the last month, we're down 13%. In the last 7 days, we're down 10%. In the last day, we're down 7%. So we can see it's just this big day that we are really bleeding off. Someone says, I think Turbo has had its day. There are no excitement around this coin anymore. Let's see what someone said. There's 2 comments. Nice. Nice. That's fine, bro. You can save your money. Um, no, it's just a thing, ladies and gentlemen. Turbo just peaks earlier. Okay. We have to go through this again. Remember, Turbo was one of the first coins to peak. Okay. It peaked earlier and then it's correcting. Okay. If everything is on track in terms of technical analysis, it's going to be the first one to launch again. You will see. Remember, Turbo pumped, it had its moments, and then other meme coins followed, other cryptos followed. Okay. So, it's not that Turbo is dead. In fact, Turbo, in a way, it's more alive than ever in terms of the amount of holders, in terms of what they're accomplishing, right? And you got to realize it's not a Turbo issue. Like when we can look at Caspa, great technology, 7.8 cents. Jasmine is a decent coin, you know, 1.3 cents. Radium's a decent coin, $2.9. Render at 3.8, right? It's also going down. I mean, this is not a Turbo issue once again. ICP, great coin. Boom, right? It's at 455. H bar. I like this coin. Sure, it is doing much better because it had that, early momentum with the real world assets and stuff. But look, right, it's also going down. Ondo's a great coin. It's a great finance coin. This is literally BlackRock, guys. This is literally BlackRock, and you know, it has a decent price. It's nothing crazy though. So it's not a Turbo issue. It's not that Turbo is done. It's that these markets are just going to make sure they're going to absolutely drain your mental. And that's just the reality, ladies and gentlemen. But anyways, I love you guys so much. I'm officially closing this off. We already talked about the whole mentality aspect, in one of the previous videos. I love you guys so much. Took Sunday off because, the Lord's Day, plus I was with the family. The previous day, we're just relaxing. So yeah. Anyways, we're back to 3 to 5 videos a day. Love you guys so much. I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.